Garry Show. The theme to Garry Show. Garry called me up and asked if I would write his theme song. I'm almost halfway finished. How do you like it so far? How do you like the theme to Garry Show? This is the theme to Garry Show, the opening theme to Garry Show. This is the music that you hear as you watch the credits. We're almost to the part of where I start to whistle. Then we'll watch it's Garry Shandling Show. This was the theme to Garry Shandling Show.
No, before you switch off, this isn't Garry Shandling Show. This is the Two Sheds Review podcast. Yep, it's me. I'm back again. I made it to episode 2. You're probably wondering why I put that theme tune there. Well, it's the theme tune from It's Garry Shandling Show, a sitcom which was broadcast in the mid-80s, and I found on a little website called televisiontunes.com. I thought it'd be better to have a theme that's a bit more light-hearted than the one I used last week, because let's be honest, that one did seem a bit, tense, like Sunday morning political show, tense theme type thing. And the last podcast I did was a bit moany, really, wasn't it? So I thought I'd try and lighten the mood a little bit. So thank you for listening to this podcast, and thank you for listening to the first episode that I did. I have to openly admit I'm not really a comfortable talker in front of an audience or in front of this microphone. Even though I've worked in retail off and on since 1995, about 25 years. So if I seem a bit nervous, if I go off on a tangent a little bit, or if there's long pauses in this thing, you'll have to forgive me. I mean, the only audience I have here at the moment are a few fish in a fish tank. You might be able to hear the pumps going and making a bubbling noise. And sitting in a chair in front of me is my big boy, my best mate, my Jack Russell Monty. Where would I be without Monty? Probably a hell of a lot more miserable than I am most of the time. Anyway, as I said, thanks for downloading this one and downloading the last one I did. I've got a few ideas I'd probably like to run past you before I go any further. I'm actually thinking about doing a music version of this podcast. It's basically where I do my smashy and nicey DJ bit and play a few songs for you. Again, I'm not sure where I'd stand copyright-wise. I'm not sure if it's exactly legal, because I'd be giving away music for free, and we all know how certain artists feel, how they feel about having their music given away for free. Well, it's just an idea that's been going around my head. I mean, years ago, I'm probably not the only one out there who used to do sort of like shows on tape recorders where, you'd make believe you've got a radio station and you record a show, and in the end you're the only one that listens to it. The way the internet is these days, you have a podcast like this. This is sort of like my radio show. That's just an idea I've been floating. Another idea is doing interviews. I mean, I back in the day when I was in the wrestling business, I did a few interviews, and they didn't go too badly. I suppose I did upload them to YouTube a few years ago, and then I deleted them for various personal reasons, and I haven't got them anymore. So there may be copies round somewhere. Who would I interview? Well, I don't know really. I did think maybe I interview local business owners here in Cromer, find out how they're coping in the current situation. I mean, who knows, if I did the interview thing, people I used to hang about in the wrestling business might crawl out of the woodwork again, suddenly act like I'm their best friend again, in the hope that they'll get a bit of free publicity on the good old internet. But then again, that probably isn't going to happen, is it? Knowing the way that they've acted over the past few years. With regards to this podcast, as well as, putting the old theme tunes on this, I was thinking, does it need a jingle? Does the Two Sheds Review podcast need a jingle? So, if there's any musicians out there who want a bit of free publicity, want to write me a little jingle that I can play on this whenever I release it, every week or so, or every few days, then, get in touch with me. Maybe local celebrities would want to record this little sound bite, Hello, my name's so-and-so, you're listening to the Two Sheds Review podcast, that sort of thing. Well, that's another idea I've been floating around. I've got tons of ideas for this thing. For this one, I'm going to sort of do a bit of a film recommendation thing. That bit's been helped along as well by that Television Tunes website. And there's also a cameo in this. It's a blink and you'll miss it affair. Also, one other thing I should let you know about. I now have a Mixcloud account to go with the Podbean account. And I'll also be uploading these episodes to my YouTube account. The reason I'm doing that is that Podbean, I'm using a free account on Podbean. I can't really afford a monthly one at the moment. Money's a bit tight as it is with everything at the moment, especially, when you're unemployed and you specialise working in the retail industry, and you can't find any retail jobs during a pandemic because everything's locked down, so money's a bit tight. I'll probably be uploading them about a week or so after they first appear on Podbean. The first episode, I've set it to premiere, I think it was on May the 2nd, about 9 o'clock GMT or BST or whatever time zone we're in here at the moment. I don't know, so like what... I'm losing a track of time here. All the days seem to be merging into one because of this lockdown. So here's a few website addresses you may want to jot down or add into your internet browser or put on your phone. There's my YouTube page. That's youtube.com/2sheds316. That's youtube.com/2sheds316. And then, of course, there's my blog, my good old-fashioned blog, which has been going in one form or another for nearly 20 years. Has it really been that long? 20 years I've been writing stuff on the internet. Right, that's twoshedsreview.blogspot.com. There's thousands of pieces on there. I'm slowly adding science fiction stories that I wrote back in the 90s. It's taken me about 10 years to get to the point I am at now, so it's taken a while, but I'm in the middle of one that lasts about 30 odd chapters, so that's taken me a while. Also, if there's Podbean, that's twoshedsreview.podbean.com. That's twoshedsreview.podbean.com. And I'm just trying to get my Mixcloud website address here for you. I've got the computer on in front of me. Yep, it's mixcloud.com/Julian-Radbourne. That's mixcloud.com/Julian-Radbourne. If you're listening to this on YouTube, I'll probably put all the links up there for you. I'm also on Facebook, facebook.com/2sheds316. I'm thinking of getting the Two Sheds Review Facebook page up again. I probably will, because I can upload this to Facebook as well. And of course, you can look for me on Twitter. Just search, put my name into Twitter. You can follow me there. You'll probably find two Julian Radbournes there. One is my old account, which got hacked years ago. If you look for the one with the handsome Jack Russell as the profile picture, that's the one I use currently, and that's You'll also find out what Monty looks like. So you've got a lot to be going on with there. Now, here's a piece of music for you. A service for you, because you're probably sitting at home wondering, what am I going to do? I'm on lockdown. What should I watch? What should I watch? How should I entertain myself? Well, I'm going to provide you with a little service here, because I've made a list for you. Man can't go wrong with a list, they say. This list is basically 10 films that you can watch during the coronavirus lockdown. And all these films have a theme. The theme being, I'd say most of them are of a dystopian nature. Yeah, I mean, what better way to remind you of our current situation? We're on lockdown. In the past few weeks, it seems like society is coming to an end. So let's just remind ourselves by watching a few films where basically society has come to an end. Now, I'm going to start with one of my all-time favourite films. It's one of the first films I saw on videotape back in 1984 when we got a video cassette recorded. You remember them, don't you? Now, if the first few films on this list prove anything, it proves that New York has takes a hell of a beating when it comes to the end of the world. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? So I'm going to start with Escape from New York. Now, one of John Carpenter's finest moments. Stars Kurt Russell as our hero Snake Plissken as he goes into Manhattan to retrieve the president whose plane has crashed there on the way to a peace conference with those nasty Soviets. Remember the Soviets? You know, we were all brought up to hate them, weren't we, back in the 70s and the 80s? But the only problem with the president's plane crashing in New York is that New York, in the future year of 1997, was basically turned into a massive open-air prison with 50-foot walls around it. And all the bad guys were thrown in there to fend for themselves. Now, how can I describe this film? It's violent, it's shocking, and it's bloody brilliant. I probably shouldn't have watched this first when I was just like 12, 13 years old, but when you're that age, Snake Plissken is still bloody cool. He's one of the coolest characters I think Kurt Russell has played. Even cooler than playing Star-Lord's dad in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Does he find the president? Well, I'm just going to leave that for you to find out. But, like I said, it is a brilliant film. There was a sequel, Escape from LA. That was okay, but, you know, Escape from New York was just a bloody brilliant film. I could go on about how brilliant it was all day. Now, as I said, New York takes a hell of a beating in this list, as is evidenced by the next film, which is actually a kind of a rip-off of Escape from New York. It's an Italian film called 2019 After the Fall of New York. It was released a couple of years later, and again it was one of the first films I remember watching back in the day when we got the VCR. It's basically a bit of a daft story. A Snake Plissken-like character and two others are sent into New York to find and retrieve what is believed to be the last fertile female left on the planet after the massive nuclear war of 1999. Yeah, but I don't remember a nuclear war in 1999, do you? I don't think the North Koreans were testing anything then, were they? But anyway, it seems a bit daft when you think about it. You know, this might seem a bit nerdy, but you can't really repopulate the entire species with just one fertile woman. Anyway, if you sort of like turn your brain off a little bit for about 90 minutes or so, this is quite good. It's quite good entertainment. I haven't watched it in quite a few years, but I do kind of have fond memories of this. Besides, I think, if I remember rightly, I got my copy of it originally because my cousin pinched it from the video shop in Croydon. He hired it out and he never took it back, and I transferred it to DVD a few years ago, and I've still got it somewhere. Like I said though, if you want great Shakespearean performances, don't watch this film, but if you just want an hour and a half or so of mindless fun, by all means. Actually, you can actually find 2019 After the Fall of New York is actually on YouTube, so you don't have to go out and find it on any streaming services, because you can get it for free. Now, once again, New York takes a hell of a battering in the Will Smith film I Am Legend. You may know that one. Will Smith and his no, it wasn't a Labrador, was it? German Shepherd, Alsatian. Basically, in 2009, most of the world wiped out through a global pandemic. Something familiar there, isn't there, really? Basically, you've got Will Smith. He's playing a US Army colonel, and he's basically trying to survive. He's got these sort of like zombie type creatures that come out at night, go a bit nuts, and he's basically just trying to survive and trying to find a cure. It's the usual good performance from Will Smith here. You know, he's a pretty decent actor. You know, I can forgive him for the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. The only downside of this film that I really didn't like was when the dog died. But then again, I'm a dog person, so, you know. Around about this time, there was another film that was released. It was another one of those cheap and cheerful straight-to-DVD things. It was called I Am Omega. It's basically the same sort of premise, like man trying to survive in a post-apocalyptic world, blah 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 blah. That one's okay, but it's not a patch on this one. While I'm mentioning I Am Legend, I've got to mention another film on my list. The Omega Man. It was starring Charlton Heston, released in the 70s. It's basically the same sort of story, but you know, it's not as good as I Am Legend, but it's still a pretty decent film. And you know, Charlton Heston made some pretty good sci-fi films back in the day when you think about it. So, you know, that's gone on the list as well. Of course, Charlton Heston has got 2 more entries on this list. He hasn't got 3 entries on this list because I'm a big Charlton Heston fan. He's got 3 entries onto this list because he's made some pretty decent sci-fi films. His next entry is Soylent Green. Again, that was made in the 70s, and it's also set in New York as well, again proving that New York, whenever there's an apocalyptic event, New York seems to come off a lot worse than everything else. Basically, Soylent Green, overpopulation, blah 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 blah, and there's this strange food stuff. It's called Soylent Green. I'm not going to tell you what the big secret of Soylent Green is, because you know, that'll spoil it for you. But it came, you know, with one of the biggest phrases, what have you, And you know, is it a shocking reveal what Soylent Green really is? I suppose if you haven't watched it, it could be. Makes you wonder what you are eating in the end, though, doesn't it? Anyway, Charlton Heston's last entry onto my list is for one of my all-time favourite films, Planet of the Apes. Now, this is the original Planet of the Apes film, made in the 1967, I think it was, and it's just a film that's captured my imagination ever since I was a kid. It spawned 4 sequels. Then there was that reimagining with Mark Wahlberg back in the 90s, I think it was. I can't remember exactly when. Then, of course, you've got the more recent trilogy with Andy Serkis playing the chimp character Caesar. But for me, the original one is also the best. Oh yeah, don't forget there was a television series in the 70s as well. But as I said, the original one is always the best. Charlton Heston plays the human, and him and his buddies, they land on a planet. They think it's an alien planet. They find that there's humans there, but the humans are dumb, and the apes are basically ruling the world. Of course, there's the big reveal at the end, the big plot twist at the end. I'm not going to reveal it to you if you're one of these sort of like few people who haven't seen this film or have never heard of it or have been living in a cave for the past 50 years or so. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but it's one of the best endings of a film I've ever seen. Right, let's move on to the next one. Let me just get my list. Ooh, what have we got next on the list? No. I'm bending the rules a little bit here. This isn't actually a film, it's a mini-series. And it's one that's been mentioned quite a bit in the past few weeks. The situation in this film has been compared to the one that we currently find ourselves in. Yep, it's The Stand. It's the mini-series adaptation of Stephen King's best-selling book. Plot, well, it's basically a story of good versus evil following a global pandemic. Hang on, global pandemic. Yes. Yeah, global pandemic. And it's basically, like I said, basically a battle of good versus evil after most of the population had been wiped out. This is possibly one of the best miniseries I've seen, and I have to admit the promos that Sky showed for it before they showed it over here, they were quite scary, really. You know, if you look on YouTube, you can probably find them. But, you know, this is one of the best things. It's probably my favourite Stephen King story. I mean, Salem's Lot is a close second, but this one is probably the best. Right, so, what's next on? Australia's entry into the world of dystopian fiction. It's a film film series that spawned many imitators. I mean, 2019, after the Fall of New York, was, I suppose you could say, was partially inspired by this film series as well. And it's also inspired 2 of the greatest tag teams in the history of the world wrestling entertainment. Yep, it's everyone's favourite Aussie, Mad Max. Now, I might as well put the entire trilogy onto this list. I know that'll make it a top 12, but you know, the first film, I actually saw the Mad Max 2, or the Road Warriors, the Americans called it, before I saw the first Mad Max film. No, I love Mad Max 2. You know, and then I saw Mad Max, the first one, I forget how long later, and that one kind of just blew me away. I just loved everything about it. And Mad Max's car was quite cool in that as well, wasn't it? Third one, I'll take it or leave it, but I suppose I'd have to include Mad Max and Mad Max 2 in this. Like, it's extremely violent, and I suppose that's just what I loved about it back when I first saw it when I was about 13, 14 years old. Technically I was breaking the law by what was in this film, but then again, they can't exactly sue me now, can they? Now, the next one on the list is Britain's only entry into this list. I mean, Britain has quite a big history of dystopian fiction, film and television series. I mean, there's loads of stuff I could have included on this, like Dave the Triffids, Survivors, but both the original series and the remake. But this is 28 Days Later. Now, you should know the story about 28 Days Later. I mean, some people class this as a zombie film, but it's not a zombie film. It's well, basically the story is there's a virus is released. Hang on, a virus being released. Okay, you're right. A virus has been released, and basically it turns everyone into a raving homicidal maniac. And a guy wakes up in hospital. He's been in a coma or something for a month, and he wakes up and he finds basically the world has gone to pot. It's got one of the best scenes I've seen in a British film. You know, when he's woken up from hospital, he's walking through London, and he basically just doesn't know what's happened because there's no one around. You know, I just love this film. I really do. It's probably, for me, it's Danny Boyle's best film. I mean, I know he's done Train Spotting and all that, but I just think it's brilliant. There was a sequel to this 28 Weeks Later, which for me was just as good, but I could only include 10 on this list. But this was a lot better. Now, the last film on this list was an American TV movie made way back in 1983. It caused a hell of a lot of controversy at the time, and it was called The Day After. Now, the reason it was caused a hell of a lot of controversy, it's basically about nuclear war. Now, when this came out, nuclear war was a very, very real threat. I mean, the Cold War was extremely cold. You know, it was broadcast at a time when the Americans and the Soviets were basically staring each other down. They had all their missiles pointed at each other, and it basically there was a hell of a lot of shit going on, and it just seemed like it could go down at any minute. World War III could happen. It seemed like World War III was going to happen at any time, and that's the really scary thing about the Day After. It shows the attack on this American town, and the after effects of the war on the town and its population threatening the surrounding area. And what's really scary about this film is, as I said, this could have actually happened to us. That was what was really, really frightening about the horror of this film was real. Well, almost real. But you know where I'm coming from. And that's why it deserves to be on this list. I mean, it's brilliantly acted. Jason Robards as the lead character is absolutely brilliant in this. As a doctor, basically working his backside off, trying to help as many people and save as many lives as he can. And the final scene in this, I'm not going to tell you what the final scene is, but it's, you know, a big ironic twist of life and death, and it's just brilliant. I mean, I watched it recently. It was broadcast on one of the film channels that we get over here that shows old films. And like I said, it's still as scary as hell, even though we're not really in danger of nuclear war at the moment. I mean, but you know, the danger was real, and that was what made this film so effective. I mean, I do remember reading that high-ups in the Soviet Union, you know, watched this film a few years later, and they just realised just how damn close we were to ending it all. I mean, the film was made nearly 40 years ago, and it's still powerful. And, well, I don't really know what more I can say about that. I mean, there was tons more films I could have included on this. I mean, if you look on Wikipedia, there's a massive list of dystopian films that you could include on that. But I'm going to give honourable mention to one film. It's a film starring Viggo Mortensen and Charlize Theron. It's called The Road. You may know may know the film. It's basically a film about a man and his son. After a massive ecological disaster, they're basically walking across America, trying to get to the coast in the hope of finding a warmer climate. Now, the film is very bleak. It is bleak, and it has an ending. I'm not sure you can call it a happy ending. Some may say it's too depressing, you know. Like I said, it's a very bleak film, but it's brilliantly made, brilliantly acted by everyone involved. And perhaps it's, well, you know, if you think it's you're gonna have a happy ending, then don't watch The Road. But I say, if you're a film fan and a fan of dystopian fiction and dystopian films, The Road is really one you should watch. And you know, I probably should have included it on the original top 10 list, but you know, who knows, maybe if I do another one of these dystopian film lists, I'll include The Road. Well, that's some viewing material for you. Like, you could probably find most of these films on the usual streaming services. As I said, 2019, After the Fall of New York, I know you can watch that on YouTube, because I basically did a bit of research before I did this, found the original trailer, and was reminded about how the film is actually a bit naff. Like I said, turn your brain off when you're watching it. But there's your list, 10 films about the end of the world that you can watch about the end of the world. That didn't make any sense at all, did it? So I'll say it again. 10 films you can watch about the end of the world while we're experiencing the possible end of the world. What's that, Monty? We've got advertising. How can we have advertising when I just started recording this a few hours ago? We've got advertising in already. Yeah, I think the little sod wants to become my co-host, the way he's looking at me. Anyway, Monty said, my dog Monty says we have advertising, so here's our ad break.
Way down deep in the middle of the Congo, a hippo took an every caught the grover and the mango. He stuck it with the others and he danced a dashie tango. The rhino said, I know, we'll call it Umbango. Umbango, you drink it in the Congo. Python picked the passion from the mama, said the mandarin. The parrot painted rackets got the hookaboos who landed in. So when it comes to sun and fun and goodness in the jungle, they all prefer the sunny, funny one they call Umbango. Umbango, easy Umbango. The new jungle drink with the taste of 9 exotic fruits.
I'm going to tell you how it's going to be. With Scotch's lifetime guarantee. Take what you want both night and day. Then re-record, not fade away. Re-record, not fade away. Re-record, not fade away.
Every recording as good as the first, or we'll give you a new tape. You can watch Scotch forever.
Re-record, not fade away.
enough to give your kids a treat. A finger of fudge is just enough until it's time to eat. It's full of peppery goodness, but very small and neat. A finger of fudge is just enough to give your kids a treat.
Well, did I actually fool you into thinking that I'd actually got some proper advertising for this podcast? Those bits of music you just heard came from an ads website, which is associated with the Television Tunes website that I mentioned earlier. So, as well as the old theme tunes, you'll probably be hearing quite a few old ads if this podcast goes on and on and on. Well, that's your lot for this edition. I know it's a bit shorter than the last one, but then again, pilot episodes normally are a bit longer than the rest of the series, aren't they? As usual, you can find me on social media. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter. I'm not on any of the Instagram or Snapchat or anything like that. So if you look for me on Twitter and Facebook, you'll probably find me. Don't forget there's my blog as well, twoshedsreview.blogspot.com. And don't forget you can listen to past episodes on Podbean, and this episode will also be uploaded to my YouTube page at youtube.com/twosheds316. So, thanks once again for listening. Hopefully I'll be back again sometime next week. I'm not sure when, depends when I can be asked to record the next one. Now that sounds a bit harsh, doesn't it? But anyway, as long as this lockdown and this virus thing goes on, stay safe, keep well and all that stuff. And thanks for listening. Bye.
Enough said.